Welcome back to another episode of The Side Eye. I am your host, Uptown Bobby,
And I'm K Clark.
and we're back again. Welcome to March. It's March, y'all. It
Yes,
doesn't
yes,
mean you have to
yes.
stop celebrating Black History, but it's March. Getting closer to spring, which is good, even though it already feels like it's spring.
hmm
Um, so here we are, man, and everybody has been talking
Oh,
about.
just a quick rest in power to Jesse Jackson, who passed, a couple
Oh
weeks
yeah,
ago.
Jesse
So,
Jackson passed
hmm
away.
hmm
They died during Black History Month, so that was
hmm
kind of crazy.
yeah,
Um, a political figure who got a little complicated in the later years because, like most icons of the civil rights era and many people at that time, the longer you live, the longer your people, are able to kind of either criticize you or pull back the onion and see some things that they might not have agreed with. But overall, a very important figure for the civil rights movement, a person whose impact cannot be erased. Everything from the Rainbow Coalition to, running for president, things of that nature. He was a very political powerhouse, but just like I said, when times, people's legacies expand and people get older and maybe more, um, they learn more of how the inner workings of politics go. Became a person who was a bit criticized more, but who is without criticism,
mm,
So
yeah,
with that said, rest in peace, rest in power to Jesse Jackson, a historic black political figure and very prominent figure of the civil rights movement.
mm, definitely.
One of those few living remnants of that era,
Yeah,
it's not many people who are still alive who were there during the assassination of Martin Luther King, there during the thick of it, during the civil rights movement in that coalition. So a significant piece of history, living history that was lost. So granted, no matter how you feel about, his stance on certain issues or um, somewhat of the watered down version he became as he aged, still a very important black political icon.
right.
Leave it or take it, So yeah, good call out. But yeah, let's get to it. Let's get to the meat of it. Let's go and just dive into it. Um, Probably going to be the documentary of the year. Um, in terms of like, pop culture entertainment. The reality check American Next Top Model expose that was released on Netflix last month. And it took over. I haven't been online, but I'm pretty sure it was the topic.
Oh
It
yeah.
was an interesting documentary because it kind of involved social media a lot, which is one of the things I kind of didn't like. But there's a huge involvement of like social media with TikTok because apparently during 2020 the show kind of had like a um, resurgence, if you
hmm
will, because people were in house and a lot of people went back to watch older seasons of American Next Top Model. It kind of like had a collective gasp at some of the things that happened. Now, granted, me and Kay Clark are old enough to watch the show in real time. I was a huge fan of the show. I was particularly um, 1 through 4 was pretty much the ones that had my attention. Uh, I really was a fan of 3. 3 was my favorite season. 3 was the one that had Eva, Yaya, and Takara.
hmm
Um, in my opinion, the most black representation, and also probably one of the seasons that really kind of showed all the good and bad of the show in one season. And I think it was one of the last seasons too that showed that the show, that kind of showed what the show could be, and also the problems with the show. And um, yeah, I was a fan of the show. Were you a fan of American Next Top Model? And if so, did you have a favorite season?
I was a fan of the show. I think I watched it consistently prior to maybe it's like it was 6 or 7. I'm not really sure how long I stuck with it, but at least through the first five, I think. So yeah, I will watch it pretty regularly. Season three, like you said, that's a standout for me. As far as like the people you said, Eva, Yaya, and Takara. Um, yeah, I was into it definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was a huge touch point. It was this was before social media. This was before kind of like a streaming. This was when network TV was still a big deal. So we kind of had to pretty much rely on TV as far as like, platform entertainment.
Mhm.
And for the most part, TV was split up into several networks um, outside of cable, because this is when network TV still mattered. Cable, prestige TV, quote unquote, was kind of just starting out, kind of like with, The Sopranos and shit like that.
Mhm.
Pretty much just HBO kind of exclusively. But as far as like network TV was still a big deal. And I remember UPN being a network where it was kind of like looking for an identity. It kind of rested on black people because the majority of the shows on UPN were black. Like like Moesha, the infamous Homeboys from Outer Space, One on One, Half and Half. All
Mhm.
those shows were UPN staples. And I think UPN probably didn't get its biggest hit until they started getting like wrestling content, like WWE SmackDown. So for America's Next Top Model to come, it was a big deal because that was the first like original crossover hit they had. Because before then, it was just like I said, Moesha, Malcolm and Eddie, Homeboys from Outer Space, very niche, quote unquote
Parkers.
black shows.
Mhm.
You know, they kind of like only cater to like a small sector of the whole pop culture zeitgeist. And then they got the addition of pro wrestling, but pro wrestling was big at that time, but that didn't really count as like a UPN original.
It was like
Uh,
Fox in the 90s, kind of.
right.
Mhm.
So American Next Top Model kind of came out of nowhere. I don't, as we saw in the documentary, no one expected it to be a hit.
Mhm.
Even UPN took a gamble on it. But with them being like a younger network, they didn't really have shit to lose. Take a shot, you get a hit. If not, oh well, back to the drawing board. Um, I do like how the documentary kind of made Tyra look like a really smart, forward thinker with how she talked about coming up with the concept, basically taking American Idol and the fashion industry and kind of like make it in the real world and making a baby with it. And
Mhm.
I thought it was cool too how even though it kind of showed how Kim Mock is one of the like executive producers, he admitted to when he sat down to talk with Tyra, he's like, oh, here we go with a dumb model. He gave her a lot of credit too for coming up with this concept and wanting to see it basically coming to fruition. And then showing the journey went from idea to pitch to show. I thought was really cool because a lot of times we don't really get to see how the sausage is made or what was the initial concept, but it was cool to see how Tyra had this idea and she took the idea and ran with it and ended up creating this television phenomenon. Um, because the first season I remember vaguely. Like one of the things I remember about season one, a cycle one, was Ebony, and I was
Mhm.
shocked that Ebony even agreed to do this because she went through some shit on that first season. Um, basically, being one of the few black women on the show, especially a black woman that looked the way she did, dark skin, low cut hair, queer. It was
Mhm.
very new to like network TV, and she had to deal with a lot of shit. And one of the things I really took away from the documentary is that, and I have always criticized the saying representation matters, because yeah, I'm not gonna say it doesn't, but representation matters isn't enough. We have to look at who is representing because one of the things you look in the documentary see is the disappointment so many not just women but so many black women had in their experience with the show. And when you say representation matters, just because you have a black face doesn't mean that black face represents all black people and every
But
black experience.
but they assumed, I think you live into with the Ebony. they assumed because the person that was in charge of the face of the show was Tyra, a black woman who had been in the model industry, who had talked about the racism that she went through, the discrimination, the criticism, the unrealistic bias and so on and so forth. They assumed with her being at the head of the show, I mean, and creating the show, that they would be protected in a way that they wouldn't necessarily be with somebody else who's at the head of the show. And what they realized, especially looking back now, is grown women, is that I really wasn't protected. That it really was just a show. You know,
Yeah, it was business.
it was
And
business.
when you have black people who break through and make it, a lot of times, even when they claim they're giving back or they claim that they're trying to open doors, they really, really are protective of their spot
Mm.
and their legacy.
And that
So,
and that is the thing that bothers me when people come back around and say, oh well, they knew what they were signing for. They need to do this, that, and the third. It's a show, which I thought it was. So like, okay, well, the show by way of its host Tyra was presented as I have been through the fashion industry for the past that point she probably been in. It's about 15 years at that point or so, and I've experienced X, Y, Z. I've dealt with the racism, I dealt with the body standards, and I want this show to be a antidote to that. I want to push back against that. That was even now in the documentary she said that I want to change standards and challenge standards in the fashion industry. So if you're going in with that mindset, and this is what you present to us, the viewers at home, and also to these young girls. So many, like I said, some of these girls are young, and some, particularly with my Gen Z folks who are being so, or even some of our fellow millennials who've been so harsh on saying they knew what they were signing up for. Keep in mind, other than the real world and the road rules at that time, reality TV was still relatively new. It kind of was the Wild West, to quote Sherry Shepherd. Even though I disagree with most of what she said on her show about that. It was the Wild West in terms of what people were allowing to be shown and how people try to push the limits, so to speak. So the average person coming in at 18, 19, they didn't think about, oh, I'm getting a villain edit, or what's my storyline, or that this, that, and the third, because we weren't savvy enough to know that at that time. People want nowadays people have that idea because you got a whole generation of people that are growing up with it, or two generations who are growing up with reality TV, and they know how things get edited and how the sausage is made. But at that time, not so much. So a little bit of grace for our early season girls, I would say, all of them really, but especially those first seasons. But then again, that's it. Yeah, it's the thing of, say, representation. Yes, you have a black face in a high place, but in this case, that face wasn't necessarily that. She took the line of like, well, I went through it, so y'all gotta go through it. More so than, I'm gonna live up to the title of what I'm saying the show is about.
right. Yeah. And even with them her saying those statements, the show in itself, even rewatching it, well, watching it through the documentary lens, it did nothing but hold up those same standards and same rules and same guidelines of the industry. How many episodes you saw where they was like, "Oh, you're too big. You have to lose weight.
Hmm.
Oh, you have to get your teeth fixed. You have to close your gap. You have to straighten your hair. You have to do this. You have to do that." So Tyra, she kind of talked out the side of her neck.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, you want to open doors for people who normally don't get the opportunity, which you kind of did. You did, you opened up, you gave random everyday people a shot at an industry that's usually very there's a lot of gatekeeping. However, throughout the show, you still held up those industry standards. Everything from the toxic weight loss culture to the colorism to the ideas of perfection when it comes to features. You held on to those standards very much so. So much so more than some people who weren't black. You telling Danielle if you don't close your gap, you're gonna go home.
Hmm.
The issues with Takara and her weight. Why even cast her if she's gonna be on a season where every episode, you're fat, you're fat, you're fat,
Hmm.
you're fat.
And they said it about Kenya too, which is Kenya pointed out, saying like it was bizarre to her and a lot of other girls, which resorted in similar eating disorders. Partly, that other people are talking about is saying they're going in. A lot of girls are growing hearing, "Oh, you're so skinny," and being made fun of because of that. Not in a situation where you have people telling them all of a sudden you're fat, you're too big. And how much of a mind fuck that was. That was even even with not maybe not as much as the card, but with Kenya. Her whole storyline was, oh, she's eating too much. She's a diet. They had a whole montage of her eating the same bagel or whatever 2 or 3 times, even though she only ate one. It made sense she was just gobbling up everything in sight. And then for the photo
Right.
shoot, what did they make her? An elephant, you know.
Right. Even the element of her expressing concern about
Hmm.
a male extra, being too hands-on, too touchy-feely, she even took a stance to stop it. And then when she did it, she was met with pushback. And even when it got to the judges, Tyra gave her this whole, oh girl, you gotta be like, boy, stop, and all that,
Hmm.
which she did, and
Yeah,
still was met with criticism and was like, you need to be more professional. It just it kind of
like
shows you that one of the overarching statements of the show was, well, that's how it was back then. That was the times. And I get that to an extent, but at the end of the day, right is right, wrong is wrong. Everybody, right is right, wrong is wrong. That's established. That's been established before reality TV. If a woman says this dude is being creepy, I don't like it. Can we maybe figure something out? Why do you need 20 years to look back on that and be like, we just, it's like clearly she's uncomfortable. Even with a lot of the shit Tyra was saying, it was just mean just to be mean. And at that time, I think that was the place for reality
what?
TV, especially
Yeah,
competitions. Because you look at American Idol, what was the biggest thing that drew people to American Idol?
that was gassy.
Simon
Yeah,
Cowell,
to
and
tell niggas they
him
couldn't
being a
sing.
complete dickhead
Hmm.
and just being mean. So when you have shows that come after that, like American Idol, I mean not American Idol, but America's Next Top Model, the one of the points of maybe getting people to watch or maybe getting people to come back is like, ooh, I gotta go see what the judges say. Ooh,
But
I gotta go see.
every show had to have that person that would say the thing. For
Yeah,
American Idol, it was Simon. For Top Model, it was Janice Dickinson. So, especially in the
yeah.
early seasons, you got to have that
Even
one.
even with the person who's the current president of the United States, his reality show was The
Yeah.
Apprentice, where all he did was
Mm.
talk shit.
Yeah.
You know,
But even with the girls, I mean, the same gaslighting that would have her be on set, can you be on set and sound uncomfortable and have Mr. J basically be like, well, we're all working here. That's that same strain that would make Diddy tell him to walk across this Brooklyn Bridge for a piece of cheesecake, and then when they push back saying, you got too much ego. That's that same strain of shit, you know.
but yeah,
So
which goes to show that the overarching theme isn't. It's not Tyra. It's not Jay. It's not Miss J. It's not America's Next Top Model. It's reality TV. It's especially reality TV from that time period. Because even with Ken, what was his last name? Moko?
Kim Mock.
Kim Mock.
Hmm.
Kim Mock had created Making the Band,
Hmm.
which went on to become, Diddy inherited and made it his thing. But he created Making the Band, right? That in the DNA of reality TV, even to this day, there is a huge component of humiliation rituals. Humiliation rituals that go along with how far can we push these people who signed up to do this shit? How bad do you want it? That is the DNA of reality TV as we know it. From Survivor to Big Brother, from the real world to Road Rules, even now to Traitors to Love is Blind. The premise is, how bad do you want this money? How bad do you want this TV time? How bad do you want this experience?
I
And
would.
what are you willing to do for this? Even Drag Race to an extent.
Mm. I mean, I could see that coming down the pike about give it 4 or 5 more years. We'll get back to that in a minute. But I say with the real world, I'd say the difference with the real world early on at least is that the real world didn't really have any stakes in it to it. It was more so here are these 7 people, different backgrounds, put them in the house, at least like I said, very early on, these early seasons, like the drama will kind of create itself in terms of just interacting with each other. I mean, give them a
Mm,
job, give them a job outside the house, give
I
them a little
will
alcohol,
say
but it's just
it was
it was
it was
proto
still
cheap. It was
it
early
still
though.
had its sinister parts with the casting, because you cast one
That's what I
black
mean. Yeah.
person, one black male, one black woman, and then you cast these other people from parts of America or wherever where they haven't even been in environments with
Mhm.
black people. and you put them in this house, and you kind of, because as we all know now from this documentary and everything we know about reality TV, producers and other people behind the scenes, they plant seeds to create like chaos,
Yes.
you know, because during the filming, it's so much downtime that half the time these motherfuckers just sitting around, you know,
Mm,
just looking at shit. You know what I'm saying? This
mm,
was before cell phones, this was before social media. You know, they couldn't watch TV. So it's like, what do you do to make them interact with each other or to make them come out of character or to make them interesting? So in order to do that, you stir shit up, you stir the
mm,
pot. You know, you tell this person that this person thinks that you're lazy, or
mm,
this person thinks that you're racist, or this person thinks that maybe you're gay. We don't never see you with women. We don't hear you talk about women. Maybe you're gay. So it's, yeah, the real world started off with I guess a simple concept, but like I said, with all these shows, there's producers, there's storyboard editors who come up with shit to make these people act. I won't say necessary. I don't think they're trying to make them act a certain. Well, they are trying to make them act a certain way, but they're trying to get them to react.
mm.
They want them
Uh,
to react on camera,
yeah, I did.
which
Yeah,
causes tension.
yeah. I think what I'm saying. I guess what I'm saying with the real world is that I feel like it's early on. Like I said, early on, I would say through most of the '90s, good. I didn't start watching the real world show probably around either Seattle, Hawaii, which was like around 98, 99. But even like earlier seasons, I guess what I'm saying is that like there was conflict, and then, of course you put people together and say, okay, put this person with this person, they'll probably be butt heads at some point. But I just feel like a lot of like I think that confrontation between early first season that I saw like a whole clip of what's the writer Kevin Powell and that girl from the South, and they were talking about racism basically, and he was trying to bring it down to her, and she wasn't hearing what he had to say. I guess I'm saying that those conflicts felt grounded in
More earnest.
yeah, it felt grounded in some form of reality. Partly because it was brand new, and so somebody you couldn't somebody had somebody walk in and be like, okay, I'm going to be the villain. You know,
Hmm.
I'm gonna do this because nobody knew what the fuck they were doing. It just was this is brand new. So the conflicts
Right.
felt more grounded in reality than they did maybe they did like in later seasons. Like they're trying to get to Vegas. It's like live porn in the hot tub. You know, because by that point it's been a decade, people are not kind of really getting into
Oh
to a
yeah, and
degree.
they know the
And
archetypes. You know, they know.
it's more glamorous, so on and so forth. But I guess like I was saying, the difference between that is like there were low stakes and the conflicts felt based on like real life things you would have in real life as far as competition and conflicts you would have in real life. If you went to college. Like if you went to college, you were around people you know you didn't see before, and for whatever reason you always had a conversation that kind of went left.
Yeah,
It
those
it felt
3 a.m.
like that.
talks.
Yeah, it felt like
Right.
that to me. Compared to when we get to a top model where it's like, you know, there is a prize in being held in front of your face. And you're saying, well, you got to do X, Y, Z to do it. And you know, and so with the fault in that is that, well, going back to the producers, obviously one big part of that was the incident with Shandy. Which I actually I'm not sure if I remember that, but I do. But what happened was, of course,
I
as she
vaguely
said,
remember it
vaguely,
until I saw the documentary.
right. And then so she says that they invited, well, some guys came over. Their drivers from the Go Seas came over. They had a bunch of drinks. She said she had 2 bottles of wine. She was pretty drunk by that point, like blackout drunk. Um, in accordance to, I think one of the talking heads said, "Well, if she's in the shower by herself, we couldn't follow her in, but because since the guy was with her, we could follow her in because at that point it's a scene, quote unquote. So they follow her in with the guy making out. She basically says that she was essayed on camera. She remembers sex happening, but she couldn't fully consent because she was blackout drunk. Slept with the guy. Next morning, she wakes up. She realized, oh, this is what happened. Lo and behold, there's a meme of the girls, girl talk time. Here come Tyra. Oh, yeah, I was with a man, and he cheated on me, and da 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 da. You know, you ever cheated on somebody before? And of course, who we know, and it just had a sexual interaction. Shandy. So she said, oh, wait, did she cheat on him? Do you need to tell him? You know, who's feeding that information? You
Yeah,
know,
they even called the episode "The Girl Who Cheated."
right. And it's like, this is the one thing that really upset me or annoying about this is because we basically had this whole situation play out in front of everybody. And then we see what happened, and they talk to Tyra, and she's like, "Oh, well, that's production," you know. And they talk to Mr. J, "Oh, that was production," you know. And it's like, okay, executive producer, you you can't on one hand say, "Oh, I was created this. I had this concept. I had this goal. I had this vision, and I went to all these networks. They turned me down, but with GP and they accepted it." And somehow you were watching the edits for every episode, you and Mr. J and everybody else. You can't say that on one hand, and the other hand say, "Oh, I didn't know about that." Of course you knew about that because why else would you go over there and say, "Oh, girl, let's talk about relationships and talk about cheating." You
Yeah,
know?
and then to have that happen and to have something like that happen and turn into a storyline is really, really cheap, especially when a person is expressing their, I don't even know if this is what I wanted to happen.
hmm
And you got people saying, oh, well, I kind of felt like something happened or, ooh, this, it's like a lot of people passing the book and passing the
Yeah,
blame and no
like it's
accountability.
like I said, production, not it. Like, but you are production. If you're like a producer,
Yeah,
nothing passes by you without you seeing
because
it.
this was only the second season.
Right.
So yeah, the budget did get bigger, which
hmm
we noticed as fans too in real time. But Tyra and Jay still were very involved with the process, of what happens and what doesn't happen. So it's a
It's
lot of revisionist history from their
well,
parts.
yeah. It's at some point you had to have seen that footage and looked at it, and be like and seen it,
Because they even claim that it was actually edited down.
Right. So, at some point, you had to have watched that to go in there and because somebody's feeding you the information saying talk about, you know, cheating and infidelity specifically the day after this happened. You know what I mean? Like that's not by mistake. You know, or by chance either you saw it and didn't care, or somebody started to tell you what happened and you stopped and said okay, and you didn't want to see it because you wanted to go ahead and do what you wanted to do. Either something along either one of those scenarios had to have happened because, like I said, you can't on the way and say I'm in control of everything, and then you say I don't know about this over here. When what's over here was a major plot line of one of the episodes of the show you created.
Yeah, it's it's
You know.
it's conflicting statements and information. And just to, I'm really shocked that the participation the show got with a lot of girls, but also how many people didn't participate. Like you had one winner from 24 cycles show up to the show, and everybody else was kind of like very early season participants. You had no Eva, you had no Yaya, you had no Takara, you had no other significant winners of the show. It kind of tells you how people use the show as a vehicle to give, as that time or whatever, but then they don't want to talk about that shit because maybe they moved on with life or just the baggage that comes with it. Um, Also, I feel like a lot of it is Tyra deserves a lot of the flack for a lot of the shit because she had so much power. It was her baby, but I do feel like Jay Alexander and Miss and Jay Emmanuel, I feel like they don't get as much smoke as they probably deserve because when you go back and watch a lot of the stuff they were saying, they were really fucking mean.
Oh
I
yeah.
know it was supposed to be a very shady, you know, I don't want to, misrepresent or speak on community, but it was very catty, very bitchy, very just mean. Even like I remember the comment they made about Danielle's gap, and she said she didn't want to close it. Then Miss J was like, "Well, you just widen the gap for the next
Another
girl." I'm
girl.
like, "What? Man, just
And then
really mean shit."
and then a few seasons later, what happened? The white girl got her teeth widened on purpose.
Yeah, so it's like
But
y'all
yeah.
were willing participants.
Oh yeah, Miss. I think Miss J is more sympathetic because she had a stroke, and so people are more sympathetic towards her than they probably would be if she was still than compared to like Nigel or Mr. J. But yeah, I mean, she said things and it was direct and kind of in catty with the girls. I said as much as Tyra may have said things, or Jazz Dixon said things. Mr. J also said things as well, especially like on set, like with Kenya, he dismissed her basically.
Hmm.
Even later on with the photo shoots, he said had a problem with in hindsight, like the race swapping photo shoots. He claimed he had issues with those, or he had issues with other things that were happening as the show got bigger and things got more outlandish. But he was literally like, I just kept my head down, did my
I just
job,
did
which
my job.
which
Like,
okay,
man.
okay, so okay, you did your job, but I mean, that's not an
You were,
excuse.
yeah, you were,
You-
yeah, you were a willing participant.
right?
Like,
You took the
you know,
cash. You took the cash the check, show what you want to see. Shout to showgirls. So I mean, it's that's not a way of just getting out of it. Tyra was the face, but at the same time, you said you were a creative director, so you had at least early on, so you had a role to play. So did Nigel, because he kind of dismissed Kenny as well in that situation, and basically I
Oh
didn't know what was
yeah.
he said I didn't know what was going on or whatever. It was like, well,
Yeah. And I didn't even know they brought him on the show just to be straight white male representation. I thought he just came on the show because he was in the industry. We
probably
found out
both.
like, well, yeah, a little bit of both, but they like, yeah, we need a straight male on here. Let's get him in there. We got too much gay shit going on. Uh, but yeah, I think they kind of dodged a lot of criticism because Tyra is such a big and easy target. Because this is her show. This is her name, this is her brand, and then the other people are kind of like, well, we were just along for the ride. I'm also surprised. Well, I'm not too surprised, but Janice Dickinson still alive, right?
Oh yeah, she live, and
Yeah.
her perspective was basically I said what I said, and it was what it was.
Yeah,
So.
I was shocked that they didn't throw enough money at her, or try to get her to come on there.
I mean, if she came on, she would have. I mean, if it was Tyra, she probably would actually come on. Because she would know she probably would have come off worse than Tyra. It would have probably been like some of the teachers to do her like that. Like if Tyra was in control of it, she probably was actually come trying to get her to come on. That way, she would have had like a foil. Like I was bad, but that bitch was worse. But
Hmm.
but I mean, given what she said, I think I read some article where she was like, it was a reality TV show. What you expect? So clearly, she don't feel needed to apologize or reflect on anything. So there you go. You know,
Right.
you know,
I was
as far
shocked
as
they
black
didn't
folks I
have
can
Tiffany
tell.
on there.
Oh,
You
they gonna
know.
have they gonna have. Well, I guess I'm surprised, but I guess at the same time, I don't know because again, Tyra wasn't in charge, but I guess maybe they wanted to appease her a bit or like appease them a bit just so that she could stay on. I don't know, but
Or they got a lot of no's. Because I saw
maybe.
an interview with Eva, and she claimed that she knew nothing of the documentary being created, and of course she wasn't asked to be a part of it. So,
Well,
um,
it's true. That's true.
and plus they probably didn't want to pay her no money neither, because it's like she's not gonna do shit for free
Right. Well, what's this?
or for little pennies.
Yeah, what's up on the read is that they say that I agree with. Basically, the Eva. Nobody has to. We know where Eva's been for the last 20 years. She's been in our faces. She's been on TV. She's been modeling. She's been acting. She's been on Housewives. We know Eva's story. We know how things pan out for Eva. We know how things pan out for Yaya to an extent, to a degree to Cara. We don't know where Danny's been. We don't know where Shandy's been. So it's more important to feature them than feature her.
Yeah, I guess, but I think with them being prominent figures of the show, you would like to hear what they thought or how their experience went, because I mean, so much that happens on the show or happened on the show that we never really got to hear what they thought, or maybe a refresher because it was so long ago. And this
Mm.
was all before like social media and everything. So a lot of that shit either forgotten or it's just like in obscure interviews and like in style magazine or some shit that nobody can find.
Well,
So,
I did find it very interesting that Oliver Twix interviews were left out because he's done very in-depth interviews with Tiffany, with a lot of the girls over the years.
mhm,
Like when I say in-depth, like long interviews, like at least an hour long, about their experiences during the show, after the show, what they thought of Tyra, so on and so forth. And it's very notable that the clip they included Tiffany was a clip that came out just after the episode aired at the time. They didn't include the interview
mm,
she did with Oliver Twix about 4 or 5 years ago. Grown up Tiffany. That's very
mm.
telling.
Yeah, because even when you go back and look at the episode, you really kind of commend Tiffany for saying no, I don't want to do this, because it was like, how is this making me better or a model? Like, I can kind of get the premise of like we want to make you ready for the media world, and we want you introduced to the names of the brands and stuff, but to read it in public on TV like that, it's like y'all y'all don't know my background. Like I'm not even really remembering Tiffany whole story, but Tiffany came from some fucked up shit. You know what I'm saying? I don't even know if she finished school. So, to put her on there and then be like, yeah, read this shit, and then like let us judge you and laugh at you, it's kind of fucked up.
Well, even with any of the girls, I mean, that situation, like, I mean, how many of those girls have even been in front of a camera reading a teleprompter? You know, it's like if that was the real world, quote unquote, and you were a model out there doing a TV gig, you probably would meet with a producer. They probably say, okay, this is the script. You can
You'll
probably
be
go
coached.
you go over the script and say, okay, what's how you pronounce this name? How you pronounce that name? Okay, how you pronounce how long I have to be in front of it? How long is my segment? You will go through it like you will with a producer out in the field. You wouldn't just be thrown up there and saying, pronounce this. I mean, you probably have to add to a degree, but the main gist of what you're doing, you would go over, you know. So yeah, just like going back to Baking the Band, it's the same reason that, it's designed to put them under pressure and have them look bad and have them fail and have Jan Dickinson look at them sideways and shit and uh yeah, it's set up to fail. It's set up to make them look like not good.
Yeah, to humiliate them and show how bad do you want it? What are you willing to do? Who are you willing to, cross or what are you going to do to get this prize at the end? How bad do you want it? And I think the problem with that show is they had so many outside voices from maybe producers and TV and the network in itself telling them, okay, what's next? Like, because let's be honest, a lot of the modeling shit is very I'm not gonna say boring, but it's not something that necessarily would make people want to watch. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference between Project Runway and America's Next Top Model. There's a lot of downtime in Project Runway because they're busy working. They're making clothes. You know what I'm saying? It's not as scandalous or sensational as Top Model because if you just show them taking pictures and walking, that's not exciting. But if you get them to do some ridiculous ass fear factor like photo shoot, then that's more interesting. You get snakes and spiders and all that shit, or you
Mhm.
get blood, or you get them pose like a crackhead. Show me how you pose as a crackhead. Let's
Mhm.
swap races. Like, who the fuck? I don't give a fuck what time. I don't give a fuck. It was the 2000s, man. That was enough time to know that swapping races is still a point of sensitivity and just not some shit you do. But here's the thing about Tyra. Tyra ain't no around the way bitch. Tyra Banks is low key a very kind of whitewashed. I'm not gonna call her Oreo, but she's a specific type of nigga. So when you give her that type of money, that type of access, she's not gonna look at shit with a critical lens and be like, nah, we ain't doing no blackface. She's gonna look at that shit and be like, sounds good. Sounds like good TV. Let's do it. You put a white girl on some makeup and be like, girl, you look like a sister. What kind of Oreo ass shit is this? So there's a lot of this shit that I think Tyra Banks was never the right woman to do this shit or talk about I'm doing it for us because Tyra after a certain point other than looking like us, you really want us. Like, I don't be trying to be the black police, but you really just, if I just had to pick a bitch that just represented black women, I wouldn't think of Tyra Banks first. That wouldn't be top of my list.
I,
You
I
know,
I do think she had genuine. I think she had some good intentions starting off as far as the premise of the show. I do think she's talking about her early experiences, pre-modeling, and then when she first started modeling, about how she got mocked for being so skinny. Then she went to Paris, and she dealt with racism and people telling her about her features and how she looked this way, she looked that way. I think all that is very real for her, and I think that was and I think that was very harmful to her. And I think she saw the show as a way to sort of push back against that. But just because you went through something doesn't mean you make you an expert on something. So you may have dealt with colorism, body image issues, racism, but doesn't necessarily mean you have done the inner work to produce a show that won't encourage those things, or that you won't put that on these young women that you're say you want to mold into models, And I think so. Part of it is that, and also part of it, she just got caught up. She got caught up. She saw those ratings for the first season. It's like she was gold them down the hills, and so from there on, it became a thing of like, okay, the ratings for this, how can we get them up here, then up here. end up here. So she got caught up. And they lost the plot. They didn't real lost the plot because when you get on, by the time they're like on the size of buildings and posing as dead models and getting shot and the race swapping and everything else, it's like, what does that have to do with modeling again? Like how and that's what a lot of them pointed out. King specifically said, I tried to get mileage out after the show, and they basically said, no, there's too much makeup in these photos. It's too much high concept because you're supposed to be basically a blank canvas as a model, so they can kind of see what they can do with you. It's like we can't use any of this because this is too much. Uh, Danielle specifically said, that this really was fucked up. She said, um, she learned later on from another model that designers said we won't hire her because she's associated with the show. And we won't want to have a reality TV star walking on our runway. And Tyra specifically told her years later, like 15 years later, saying, I knew it was happening and I didn't do anything about it. The girl, what the
Yeah,
fuck?
but I mean, you gotta look at the verbiage too. Tyra, when she was talking about why she wanted to do time out, yeah, she mentioned all that shit about opening doors, but she also said something too. This was my payback. You
Mm.
know, this was my get back. This was me showing y'all that, oh, the little black girl made it. You know what I'm saying? Even when she talked about, yeah, you're on the cover of a magazine, but this is a TV show. This is national. People are gonna remember this. People are gonna forget those magazine covers. So this was like a chip on
All,
her shoulder.
all
This was,
ego.
yeah, this was ego driven. Like it it can mean multiple things, right? The show did, the show was a vehicle that opened up doors for girls who traditionally wouldn't have been accepted in that world. However, a lot of this shit was about Tyra Banks' ego and Tyra Banks going from a supermodel to a brand. And at that time, the biggest way to become a brand was to get involved with television, point blank, because that show drove her to another level of stardom. Then it launched a TV daytime talk show. You know what I'm saying? It just opened up more doors for her, and then it just gave her more time to step away from modeling and then just do this TV shit. So
Mm.
yeah, even when and then there's a thing too with black people who make it, who look at you and say, "Well, I did it." Or I had to go through it, so you got to go through it. She
Yes, that,
told
yeah.
Tiffany that. She said, I dealt with this. I dealt with that. I
But
overcame this,
I
you
learned.
know, but I learned, she played the game and she won, but at what price? And everybody not willing to play
Well,
that
I
game.
think we see in the price with how she was coming across in that documentary. I told you
Yeah,
she was
so
a smiles of steel, bitch. I mean, just like,
and and the show was a 3 hour commercial. Because at the end of the shit, what the bitch say? She held her hands up and say, "Y'all won't be ready for cycle 25."
my
Like
work is not done.
who the fuck is thinking about the newest season after all this shit we didn't watch? I don't even you couldn't, I ain't gonna say you couldn't pay me, but I have no interest in watching a new generation of America's Next Top Model.
Especially after the fact that, again, how she came across. I mean, as I told you, I said, it feels like she was in a whole different documentary than the rest of the girls were. Like, I mean, the deflecting, the dodging, just the smizing, like just all that. Like, I mean, there's no way that you could watch yourself back looking like that and think, I did good. I did that. I ate that. It's
Well,
like,
it just comes from a place of ego, and it comes from a place that I did something that no one else was willing to do, and I gave people a chance. Now, with the chance part, I agree to a little extent. Like, you have certain opportunities people in their whole life never get, and you do get an opportunity, and you kind of have to make the most out of it. Now, I will say what hindered a lot of those girls then was the fact there was no social media. The internet was still very um, primitive in a way. So now, when you do reality TV, that's a hustle. Like, you could do one season of Love is Blind and you can increase your followers, you can get branding deals, you can start a podcast. The possibilities are endless. But back then, if you did reality TV, you kind of either had to play the game of doing like reality TV shit, like showing up to conventions or whatever the fuck, hoping. somebody recognized you in the street. There wasn't a real way to commodify it then. So I kind of feel bad for the girls in that regard. But in certain aspects, certain girls did get opportunities, and then it just like the lightning never struck. I mean, the same thing goes with American Idol. There you had people who auditioned or people who won the show. What the fuck is Justin? I don't know what the fuck Justin doing. He didn't win, but he was second place. I don't know what the fuck he doing. What the fuck is Clay Aiken doing? I don't know. Oh shit, Ruben, he's still alive, but I don't know. So it's just sometimes you get opportunities and they take you somewhere where you haven't been, but then that's it. And then you go back to real life.
Yeah.
So I don't
Well,
know. Some regards, I don't really pity that part too much because who's to say that you were guaranteed to be this thing, right? Like you were never guaranteed to be famous beyond this show. A lot of the fame that happens beyond the show is kind of like time and luck and just a lot of other shit that you might not even be in control of.
yeah, that's true. I think that well, I'd say what they were promised or what the promise was for the winner at least was the idea that you would get a entree at least into the industry in a way that you wouldn't have had if you didn't do the show. The fact that you would be signed to a modeling agency and which leads you to believe that that agency would try to get you booked in shows, which could lead to other things. So I think in Danielle's case specifically, what she may have thought was okay, if I won and I'm signed to this company they're gonna send me out on stuff. But because what they didn't tell was that we won't send you out on stuff because we don't want because you're associated with the show, you know. But I would say the advantage what they would have now, people that will be on the show now, as opposed to like '03, is that say you're on the show and you get a quote unquote villain edit. Now you have the opportunity if you have a follower on social media, you can go live on IG, live on TikTok or whatever, and push back on that in real time in a way that you couldn't in 2003, 2004 saying, "Oh no, that
Yeah.
didn't happen that way. That was wrong. This is
It's
actually what
it,
happened."
it's a hustle, man. It's why so many people still do reality TV
Mhm.
because with all we know about reality TV from all the shows, Survivor, Big Brother, Real World, you go down the whole list. People still sign up to do this shit, knowing the consequences, knowing the horror stories, knowing how production operates. People still do this bullshit because everybody wants their 15 minutes. And what's the easiest way to get 15 minutes? Go on motherfucking TV. And people still do it. And they gonna keep doing it. That's cycle 25. After this documentary, it's still gonna be girls who sign up for that shit because I want to do it and I want to see it and I get to do this. It's still people who want to do this bullshit because it's a human. It taps into human nature, that part of wanting to be a part of something and that idea of fame, and
I,
people are going to keep doing it.
I'd say fame just to give the girls some empathy. I would say in terms of top model and I would say American Idol and then even Drag Race. I'll get to Drag Race in a second. You know, with those particular shows, yes, they are reality TV, but they are built around a goal. You know, you go to American Idol if you can sing. The goal is I want to get to the top 10 or whatever because I want to sing as a career. And if this is the route that I may have to go to get to that, even though it may not work out as far as me winning or whatever, then I'm willing to do that, take that route. Same with top model, same with, drag race, Um, I want to have a career in entertainment and, if the whole traditional structure has broken down, there's no MTV, there's no BET, there's no magazines in terms of modeling. There's no there's less clubs and bars to perform in as a drag queen, as a musician, then this may be the route in part.
I mean, yeah, but I think ultimately it just goes to people wanting to be on fucking TV. I mean, like, listen, like, because how many people go on that shit? Because remember, for a big part of American Idol, a lot of people got famous who knew they had no ability to
Right.
sing
What I'm
and none
talking
of
about,
that.
yeah, yeah. I'm not less William Hung, more Kelly Clarkson. That's what I'm talking about.
Right. And it's just I don't know. It's such a weird industry when you do it because like for instance, Love Is Blind. I reference that because I watch it and I enjoy it.
Mm,
But Love Is Blind a few seasons ago really kind of drew reality TV to the table because it's like you're putting these people in precarious situations, but you're not paying them what they're worth. You're not giving them their honest due. You're exploiting them heavily. But then the producers and the shows, all of them go back to the same argument. These people grown. These people know what they're doing. They signed up for it. And the horrible reality is if they won't do it, we'll find somebody else who will do it. Because there's always going to be somebody willing to trade their morals. I don't want to get too altruistic with it. I don't want to get sound like I'm just putting these people down and being judgy.
mm,
But there's always going to be a group of people. If you say, come on this TV show and eat shit, eat literal shit, they will go on that show and they will eat shit because they are on TV and they have a camera in front of them. Always going to be some people. So it's always going to be people who are willing to be humiliated, who are willing to be exploited because they get an opportunity to have 15 minutes of fame and they get to turn that 15 minutes of fame into probably a career.
mm,
So that's the ugly part of reality TV. And that's the reason why this shit will never really stop because someone's always going to be willing to come along and do the shit and take the shit. And then once they finish, they say, well, shit, I had time of my life. Or if I could do it all over again, I'll do it.
yeah. Yeah.
And it's
But
unfortunate, but I mean, that's just how there's a show called on Fox called, I think like the 99, and they get all these people to do all this stupid shit. So at the end, the person I think gets $1 million. What I
mhm.
tell you is shit that's like melt a block of ice so you can get like a key out or like a whistle out. And you had people like rubbing their ass on this ice, just doing shit. And it's just like it's and then times is hard. Niggas need money, so niggas really
Yeah,
gonna go on there
yeah.
and do that shit. But it's just all reality TV is just it's always gonna prosper at the end because it's always gonna be somebody willing to go through that humiliation, that crawl, get it out the mud.
Mhm,
I don't give a damn. I'll do whatever you tell me to do just to have that moment.
mhm. Yeah, I guess for me, that you have that part of reality TV, but I guess what I'm saying, you have a show like what's the show?
But like stuff like The Voice and stuff like that though,
Yeah, yeah,
it's more
yeah,
earnest.
yeah, yeah, like this show about makeup artists that compete against each other. You know, they eliminate one each episode. I can't think of the name of the show, but
Oh,
like,
with the I know what you're talking about. Yeah, or even the tattoo show
right, it's
with the
like
tattoo
so.
artist on there.
Yeah, it's
It's
still
more
reality.
earnest.
Yeah, it's still reality TV. It's still, editing and things like that going on. But there are people who have like a genuine, most people that I think, or at least some of them do, have a genuine desire, create a goal
Yeah,
to like do this thing.
right.
You know,
Or a
and it's
talent even.
yeah, it is having to take this route to try to get to it. And so if the competition is based around things that are related to that and preparing them for this career, I take less of an issue with that than I do with people, rubbing their ass on ice. you know, uh, you know, but both come with problems. Going back to Drag Race, I mean, you know, as Drag Race has grown bigger, you look back at like the early seasons, like '09, the first season. Most of the girls that come on the show, you could for their runway looks for each episode, you could look at their outfits and be like, okay, she got that from the mall. She got that from Amazon.
Mm.
She got it from the Goodwill. She's throwing it up. She sequences it up. Like they would have maybe one or two really fancy outfits for like the finale. And that'll be like the big outfit for the finale. You know, the best wig, best dress, whatever. Now, first episode, three custom made runway looks, $500 wigs up top, $1,000 outfits they probably got custom made by a designer. So like the
Mm.
average queen, you priced
They
out.
priced out. Yeah.
You got girls spending mortgage money to get on the show.
Damn.
You know, and so that's that part of it. As it's growing bigger, you also got the racism of some of the fans. You also got the issues they've had at least early on, at least when RuPaul including trans girls in the show. Which that seems to have kind of worked itself out in a way. But there's problems there's been problems with that show too that they could explore if they want to do a series on it. So,
What season are they on now with Drag
ooh, I
Race?
think 18.
Mm,
I think 18.
mm. And like you mentioned, some of the problems with like the price, like the money part. Like, is there a way? How would you? I don't want to say fix it because I'm not trying to insinuate that there's something wrong with the show, but is there a way you would come up with to return it back to its like maybe earnest beginnings?
Oh, I don't know because like I said, it's gotten so big now that not only it's like especially the queens, but it's also the fans. Like the fandom has changed. Like if a queen came on looking like they did in '09, they'd get ripped to shreds online. You know,
Mm,
as far as like the outfit and their drag. It's like the expectations have risen. So like I'm not sure if you can go back to that sort of early seasons uh drag that was more homegrown, so to speak. I mean, you got queens that can sew, and the ones that can sew, they could probably can sew their own stuff and get on there and do their stuff, and they still have the challenges, things like that, and everything else. But I mean, it's undeniable. I mean, the cost has risen. In terms of like the outfits and the jewelry and the wigs and the expectations of how everything's supposed to look. I mean, it's night and day. You know,
mm,
um, and how to solve that. I'm I mean, you probably have to specifically put a show where it's like, I don't know, the cap, you have the cap on the expenses or I don't know really exactly how you would resolve that. Unless somebody else will start a similar show with a smaller audience. Because that's how
mm,
Drag Race started. It was a smaller audience. I think it was on Logo for a long time. Then it switched to
mm,
VH1. That's when it really started to blow up. So,
mm. Well, like you said, I'm sure there's gonna be a documentary one day about drag racing, the ups and downs and the good and bad. Because I do see drag races being one of those shows that was necessary and shed light on a community that really deserved their recognition. But just like anything, once too much money get involved and too much popularity, shit get kind of funny. So, but it's definitely a show that I don't think it'll be considered as. I don't think there was as many toxic moments as American Next Top Model,
yeah.
but at least on screen.
Mm,
But definitely a show that could be criticized in some aspects and still be praised for what it did for the community.
mm,
For sure. And I think that ultimately that's what happens with American Next Top Model. There were some things that happened in it that were very positive. I really like the part where they talked about the queer experience because having somebody like Miss J
mm,
was very revolutionary. This 6 foot plus black gay man who got to be himself, who got to be very um it was like pose before pose. He got to be
mm,
all of those elements and highlight that culture and show the even Jay Emanuel, who sometimes even in the documentary, kind of still rubbed me the wrong way. I always felt like he was a messy little motherfucker. Even on this, he kind of felt like kind of messy. Stuff. Oh my soul, it was weighing on my soul. It was chipping away. Nigga, you did what 18 cycles? Like you just did like the fact that Tara, your relationship kind of strained and you kind of your role got reduced.
And
But
two of a kind.
yeah.
He wrote a whole like Devil Wears Prada type book about it. Shit.
Oh, really? Is it good?
I didn't read it, but I mean the way that cover looked, I mean that's just pure Devil Wears Prada. The way the
Right.
cover
So he's an
design.
opera. Yeah, he's always kind of come off a little opportunist to me.
Mhm.
So, but like I said, it's parts of that show that were very important and significant for like TV history and pop culture moments. Like I was really shocked that Ebony even agreed to do it because her character, I say character, but her being on that show represented a lot. And I didn't think she would ever come back and talk about it because it was so much shit that happened. You know what I'm saying? Uh, but yeah, I think for all in all, American Next Time I will be remembered for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think Tyra really needs to read the room and not even try to bring that shit back because girl, we good. Like we good. There's a reason why it ended. Like when they were talking, like there was a part on the thing where the journalist talked about she stopped watching once Tyra left. I'm like, girl, you lying? You been stopped watching. Like all of us had been stopped watching.
Look
Like
up.
nobody stopped watching. Like I would say about once UPN became the CW, I think a lot of us stopped watching because it just time, it was just
Yeah,
natural, you know.
because
It
she
just
started at like male models. She started like doing like viewers' choice voting and things like that. And then they did so a little montage she did where she was like doing whole bunch of shit. And then at one point she was like a big father. She went, so I was like,
like
what
what?
the
Like
fuck are we doing?
by the time Twitter came out, I had been left top model alone. I was like, girl, people still watched it, so you know, it's just one of those things that it just time just
She
you
got
had your
fired
moment.
eventually.
Yeah, yeah, she got fired. So, you had your moment. It was good. It was fun. It was ugly. It was bad. Now it's time to reflect and move on. You know, I will say this though, Tyra Banks still look good to me in that Dick Tracy coat. So I
Carmen San
was,
Diego.
yeah, I was a fan. I was like, Tyra still got it. Damn. Um, and also I think it's funny too about the relationship parts. Like you said, it felt like they would film two different documentaries. Because
Mhm.
even the part where Nigel and Jay Alexander and Jay Emmanuel were together, it was like Tyra ain't finna walk through that door. It almost felt like the Fresh Prince reunion, and it was like kind of uneasy. But then it was like, well, everybody got together and started smiling. But that shit was like, man, Tyra not walking through that door. Like, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for the memories, man. Y'all, we spent most of the episode talking about that documentary, but I mean, it was worth it because that documentary, I mean, the show in itself was a huge part of TV culture in that time frame. And then, to say that me and Kate Clark were actually there, we were young, but we actually watched it in real time, kind of brought back like a lot of memories and stuff like
Mhm.
that. But before we wrap up, though, we wanted to mention what was that? The award incident?
BAFTA. Yeah.
BAFTA, yeah. With the person that had Tourette's who blurted out racial slurs.
Hmm.
Um, how the fuck did y'all not have him in the green room? Why was he so close to the stage? And also, um, I don't know many people with Tourette's, and I know it's a very complex condition, but I've never heard, and like I said, I'm not an expert on this at all, but the racial part kind of perplexed me because what like has he not seen black people before? Does he do that every
Uh,
time he sees a black
well, okay,
person?
so the person's name is John Davidson. He did a documentary about Tourette's, and so that's why he was at the BAFTA the award show basically because he did a documentary about his condition, um, and I know there's a form of Tourette's. I don't know much about Tourette's, but what I do know is there's a form of Tourette's to where basically the person will say things that are the opposite of what they actually believe. So
Mm,
now if you're listening, you can take it. You God, take him at his word, or not take him at his word. But as a part, as a variant on the condition, that's the one that gets the most, Southpaw treatment, I would say, with the curse words, things like that. But not everybody has Tourette's does that, but some people that have Tourette's do that. And so, let's say for the sake of argument that he said the opposite of what he believed. My thing is, okay, you said it, and you can't control what you say because that's part of Tourette's. You literally can't control your ticks, as far as I know, as far as I understand. If that's the case, okay, I can. Myself and other black folks. We know enough to know that. On the other hand, if you know that, then why can't you also acknowledge the harm that was done and just apologize? Like he released a statement. It was all about how he felt so ashamed and how he left after a certain point. Because he also said some other things. He said it more than once. He said while Michael B. Jordan and Dale Rhea were on stage. He also Delroy Orlando were on stage. He also said it again. I think during the other times during the show, at least three times. Um, why not just apologize? Why do this whole segment where you mostly made about you and your own shame about what you said rather than saying it wasn't intentional, but I still apologize because harm was done. He did it to the Queen. When he met the Queen, he said fuck the Queen, but then he apologized. And then it's notable but beyond him getting to the BAFTA, the award show themselves, you had all the time in the world to censor Free Palestine, Free Congo, Free Sudan, but you didn't edit out the nigga. You know,
mm,
you edited out when he called Ellen Cummings the show host a faggot, but
mm.
you didn't edit out nigga.
Yeah, and I also didn't like the host explanation either when it was happening. Like
Alan, yeah.
basically, basically just trying to talk it away. It was like, no, you can be more, apologetic and read the room and
Mhm.
kind of, explore what just happened versus like, oh, silly man,
Mhm.
ignore him. It's like, what the fuck? Like, so
That's the icy British racism shit.
yeah. Also, he shouldn't have been. I still stand by this. He should have been placed. This man had a whole fucking documentary made about his condition. You put his ass in the green room. You don't
Well,
have him,
well, just to push back on this a little bit, that does get into a dicey area where you're saying who's allowed to be in public, who's not allowed to be in public. You know, when you get to talk about people that have
man.
different conditions
Hey,
and like that. So,
do you want motherfucker out there
I,
calling people
I,
niggas,
I,
or do
I,
you
I,
want?
I don't, but also, it's like, I guess what I'm saying is like, it's I know my personal feelings about it. You know, I don't want somebody screaming nigga in my face, particularly a British white British man. But at the same time, I don't want to be the dictator of who is and isn't allowed in public.
I I get it, but my thing is it's time and place. Like it's one. If I didn't know his condition, of course I wouldn't want that. But the motherfucker got a whole movie made. It's like maybe I want to take some precautions just in case shit get a little spicy. But I get what you're saying too about he's there for a reason. You want to include him in the ceremony. Everything like that. But also, yeah, I guarantee you, it's gonna be some provisions made next time if he gets invited. Shit, or maybe he won't. I don't know, but I know he ain't coming to the Oscars. I'll say that.
Well, if he did, I think the Oscars would have cleaned it up
Mm.
better than BAFTA would have. You know, I I think, this is just my own little theory, not proven. I think they low key used him and us to create some publicity for the BAFTA because when's the last time
Yeah,
somebody
because
talked about it?
it's a very low stakes. I don't hear people talk about that during award season, so
Hmm.
I could lean into that theory as well. It's the most publicity they ever got. I mean, shit, we don't even know who most of the winners are. We still talking about that part. So
Hmm. Yeah, but for
yeah,
me, yeah, this for his part, I think he should have gone further in his statement, just outright just said I'm sorry and just apologized, rather than doing the whole song and dance like if you were offended, I'm so ashamed, that so on and so forth, and also by extension, all the people mostly, by those people must mean white people was trying to finger wag at us saying y'all should be offended. It's like no, we should be offended. It's like you can be unintentional in what you were doing and still cause harm, you know. Don't tell us
mm,
how we shouldn't feel about it. You know. Uh, and also to BAFTA, they should have done better overall. They should have the same way you censored the calls for freedom. You maybe should have censored this as well.
right.
And
So
other
yeah,
slurs.
man, that's just heavy. That's a lot going on, and shout out to the actors who took it in stride and didn't necessarily let them knock it out. Knock them out of character. In the moment. So.
Right. Which is that's
Uh,
the unfair position that we often put in. We got to be the ones that are the bigger
right.
person,
The,
quote
the
unquote.
bigger people. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah. So, but man, thank y'all for listening, man. Thank y'all for showing up.
Oh, rock
Thank y'all
hard,
for
real quick.
coming. Oh yeah, that was that shit. Oh yeah, I guess good with
Okay.
Rock Hall of Fame.
Yeah, so who's up is this year? I know real quick, I think it's so Shakira is eligible, Lauryn Hill, Pink, which is for old as fuck, Phil Collins, New Edition, Wu-Tang Clan, and Mariah for the third time is also one of the nominees. Also on listed artists, NXS, Iron Maiden, Joy Division, and the Black
I think
Crowes.
they should just change the name. Like it should be called like the Music Hall of Fame or some shit. 'Cause that rock and roll still carries such a negative connotation, especially like it carries one for both sides. You got the people, the quote unquote purists who never wanted hip hop acts and R&B acts
Gene
included in it.
Simmons.
Exactly. And then you got people who don't even know what it really is or what it represents or what it means. And kind of like when you have these moments where you be like, oh, this person's figured that you like, well, what the fuck does that even mean? What's the value? What's the significance of it?
Yeah,
Um,
Yeah, I think it's some confusion or just willful confusion about what they mean when they say rock and roll. For me, I think most people what it means is that they're talking about popular music from like the mid 50s to now, and notable artists under that umbrella. So if you phrase it that way, then everybody on this list can be included. But if you're just talking about rock music in particular as a specific genre, then that's where you get people saying like, well, why is this person and why is this person? That's not rock and roll, you know. So yeah, it may be better.
Right.
It may be better to change it to like the popular music hall of fame. That doesn't want to
Yeah,
target these things.
eventually it should change. 'Cause rock
So
and roll as a concept, as a genre, isn't even as big as it was during the time, like that inception. Um, I'm not gonna say rock is dead because that's ignorant, but rock is just not what people like Gene Simmons and all them had in mind when this shit when they were getting inducted, and then when their response when other people who aren't under that genre get inducted. And it just clears up confusion to have a proper title, especially at this point. And then also it's just I don't know, man. As a general consumer, I'd be like, man, I don't even give a fuck. Like, I don't plan on going to Cleveland anytime soon to go there. So it'd be like, I guess. But I know for the artists who well, some of the artists who get inducted, it's a big thing to them. So,
yeah. Well, out of the people that have been nominated, who do you think should get in?
I mean, everybody you said, I think is worthy of getting in.
Hmm. Collins, yeah.
Phil Collins, Mariah Carey. I think everybody you mentioned should get in because it's like, what is the category? What's the criteria? What stops somebody from getting in?
The baseline has to be 25 years since your first release. So there's that as far as like minimum requirement. And then beyond that, I think you just have to have then it becomes more like, well, what have been your notable contributions to music, popular culture, etc., so on. And you got the voting committees that do their voting on that. So I think it's more about perception more than anything. That's probably why Mariah in particular is probably her third time because for the old white men rock critics establishment, they probably still see her the same way they saw her in 1990. She's a pop
Which makes
probably.
and it's shit like that that make me not give a fuck about it because Mariah Carey would matter more to me than fucking Gene Simmons, and
Fuck
it's
Gene Simmons.
and that be the disconnect, man. And that's why I be like, certain shit don't be for us, man.
Mm.
Let white folks have their shit. Like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, white folks should have been just had that shit to themselves, and niggas should have came up with their own thing.
Well, I think
Cause
you got, don't she have the Hip Hop Hall of Fame or something like that or whatever?
man, nobody give a fuck about that.
Oh, all right.
But but yeah, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's
Well, yeah, well, I
like
mean, they should that's
they
the if
should,
we want to go that
yeah,
way. Yeah.
yeah, they should, because it's like why is Mariah Carey this her third time to try to get into this shit? When we talking about fucking Mariah Carey, but
Mhm.
like you said, it's some old white people who look at her and be like the bitch from the '90s, the mulatto, it's just it's not fair to
It's yeah,
black artists.
it conforms to certain tastes. Like Mary got it her first time, but I would say, and of course, as she should have. But I think the reason why Mary got it in because she fits the mold that they like. That diva with drama. They eat that shit up. That's not Mary's fault, but because she falls under that category more so than Mariah does, they can conceptualize her more than they could Mariah or Janet. I'm surprised Madonna got in her first time because she don't fit that model either. She white. But
Well, yeah, and at the end of the day, she still is Madonna.
mm. but I mean,
I
she
figured
she
they
doesn't
added her
fall.
in too,
She
just
she
for
she
the.
would she doesn't fall into like she's not a Carole King and she's not a Joan Jett. Is what I mean. You know.
No, no, yeah, she don't fit in there, but it just some people I think like Madonna is just so larger than life. You kind of have to make that exception
Mm,
for her. But yeah,
yeah.
overall, yeah, I mean, it's cool for the artists, the black
Mm,
artists. But I don't. Well, I ain't gonna say Phil Collins. I fuck with Phil Collins. Phil Collins got some good music,
yeah.
but the entity in itself, I'm just not the biggest fan of because it's just like okay, like these all these provisions and shit. Like I don't know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I like the
that's it.
montages. Mhm.
I've never even watched the ceremony.
I usually watch them on YouTube. They usually post them like a couple of days after. Sometimes they usually air on HBO, so I would watch it
Hmm.
on HBO Max or whatever. But usually I go back and just watch. Okay, I watch the art piece or if they perform. I watch performers like that. So
Hmm. Well, that is pretty much our episode in a nutshell. We hit most. I'm sorry, y'all. Most of the episode was about the documentary, but if you haven't watched the documentary, go ahead and watch it. It's pretty entertaining. Like I said, I wasn't the biggest fan of all the social media influencers parts, but I get why they did that. But it's a good documentary. It's three parts. It's very informative about the show and what happened beyond the show. And I think for those of us who lived through it, it's a good moment of like reflection and looking back at something that was like, even in real time, many of us was like, what the hell? But yeah. So all in all, good episode. Thank y'all for listening. We'll be back soon. Keep your eyes open and your eyebrows raised. I am Uptown Bobby,
and I'm K Clark.
and we are out.